Today we're going to talk about preventative medicine. It should come as no surprise that preventative medicine requires less effort, uses less money, and produces better results in the prevention of illness and the protection of our health. So as we talk about preventative medicine, let's begin by discussing the difference between genetic damage versus genetic mutation. Aging is primarily a result of genetic damage, while most cancer is ultimately a result of genetic mutation. However, these two things are not the same. But the best way to both reduce aging and to cure cancer is to take preventative measures. Our cells normally can divide only about 50 to 70 times because the telomeres, think of these as the DNA tails, get progressively shorter until the cells themselves become unable to reproduce, die, or sustain genetic damage that can cause cancer. However, interestingly, telomeres do not shorten with age in heart and brain tissue or other cells in our bodies that do not divide continually. But note in the chart on the left how telomere length decreases substantially over time in our bodily cells, reducing the body's ability to sustain itself. So when we look at the primary factors that affect aging, we see this telomere shortening, which we've already discussed, chronological aging, which increases overall risk factors over time, oxidative stress, which damages DNA, proteins, and lipids, and glycation, wherein glucose sugar binds to and inhibits DNA, proteins, and lipids. The knowledge that these factors affect aging raises an important question. How long could we live if these causes were substantially reduced or eliminated? One such estimate by Richard Cawthon, a University of Utah genetics professor, says that if all processes of aging could be eliminated and oxidative stress damage could be repaired, people could live 1,000 years. And while it may seem a little optimistic to begin planning to attend your great-great-great-granddaughter's wedding, most people would agree that there are certainly things that we can begin to do to increase our lifespan and improve our general health. In order to understand the process of aging and cellular degeneration, it's important that we understand how cells in our bodies are manufactured. This begins with mitochondrial and nuclear DNA. Mitochondrial DNA is what we have in mother's egg. It has about 100,000 to 1 million copies from her mitochondria in the special egg that the sperm unites with. Nuclear DNA is the pair made up of the combined male and female DNA that is in the nucleus of each cell. This is produced when the mitochondrial DNA from the man and the woman combine to create a single nuclear strand. This slide shows a picture of a human cell. The intersection of the cell is called the nucleus. This is where copies of the DNA spirals that are made up of the combined male and female DNA are housed. These nuclei are in every cell of the human body, and they create copies of themselves every time the cell divides. Out in the blue region, we see the mitochondrial DNA. These are the factories that give life support to the body and allow the body to sustain itself by producing ATP and proteins. They are also found in every cell in the body, including fat cells, muscle tissue, neurons, white and red blood cells. They all have mitochondria to give them life. In the outer regions of the cells, we have transcripted programs that come from the nuclear DNA that manufacture proteins, hormones, and other things that each of these cells need to sustain the body, each cell producing whatever it's programmed to create and according to the kind of cell it happens to be. Mitochondrial DNA is represented by a circle rather than the spiral we use to show nuclear DNA. Here each section of the DNA represents a program for manufacturing essential proteins and ATP. ATP is created when our cells process the food we eat, and this gives us energy during our waking hours. Every cell in the body is burning ATP all the time, but when you get tired at night, it means that ATP levels in your body are depleted and you need to get rest in order for the mitochondria to regenerate ATP. Dr. Warburg received the Nobel Prize showing that dysfunctional mitochondria actually lead to acidic cancer cells and significantly reduce ATP production. This is a summary of what we saw in the video, The Wonder of a Tiny Cell, showing how each cell has the ability to transcript programs from the large DNA strands, just the ones that are needed for each type of cell. Again, depending on whether it's a brain cell, a fat cell, a muscle cell, or even a red blood cell. The parts that are needed are transcribed through the nucleus membrane and become factories to produce proteins, hormones, etc., which are used to sustain the whole body. Now let's talk about the fight for health. First of all, it's important to note that this is an actual war that's going on inside your body. The body's repair mechanisms must be protected in order to allow the cells to properly regenerate. It also means that every choice that you make, whether in the food you eat or the way you live your life, either enhances or diminishes your ability to win this battle. So you begin to win this battle in your body by caring for yourself. What are some of the causes of DNA damage? Well, first and perhaps most importantly is the intake of fructose. Secondly, immune system dysfunctions. Third, poisonous foods and overeating. Fourth, lack of elemental nutrients for cell factory production. 5, cellular reproductive programs have timed out or lost their ability to reproduce. 6, microbial damage. And 7, lack of oxygenation. Now let's talk about one of the more important biological cellular functions. This graphic demonstrates something called the cellular sodium ion pump. These gaps line the cell membrane and allow 2 potassium ions to pass into the cell while expelling 3 used sodium ions to the outside. Each individual pump cycle requires 1 ATP explosion. And during this cycle, the sodium ions that once acted as carriers for nutrients to the cell are expelled after use, while the potassium ions are absorbed into the cell during the same process. Sodium, magnesium, potassium, and calcium are 4 elements on the periodic table that can form either ionic or covalent bonds to become important tissues in the body. Here we show the calcium membrane integrity factor, a special compound that lines the inside of the protein transport portal. This molecule keeps harmful microbes out of the cell, and the same calcium membrane integrity factor has been demonstrated at Johns Hopkins to kill cancer cells in lab experiments, though it is a normal part of healthy cells. We also see in this graphic that both calcium and magnesium are needed in the exercise of muscle. Calcium is required when muscles contract, while magnesium is necessary when muscles relax. When these ratios are out of proper proportion to each other in the body, some individuals experience changes in their regular heart rhythm. Here we see the periodic table. The red ones are the microminerals that we need significant amounts of for the normal function of the human body. The blue ones are trace minerals that the body also needs, but in much lower quantities. However, the big 4, the elements we need the most, are shown in this block: sodium, magnesium, potassium, and calcium. The required ratio of these elements is shown here. We, by far, need calcium more than any other mineral, but the form of the mineral is also important. It needs to be in a form that the body can actually utilize. Potassium is also important and must be consumed regularly, as must magnesium. Phosphorus must be bound to the calcium and magnesium in order to be effective. To our benefit, the body will normally regulate the ratio of these minerals unless we consume the wrong kinds of foods or experience other health problems that create imbalance in these ratios. Such an imbalance will most certainly increase the rate at which our bodies age. Research in Europe demonstrates that cell membrane integrity factor can be used to protect cell membranes from invading microbes and to strengthen the cellular structure against influences which can advance the aging process. It has even been used as a treatment for multiple sclerosis, where the membrane walls are severely deteriorating in the myelin. Mineral transport factor provides magnesium and other minerals that the mitochondria needs in order to maintain healthy structural integrity. This is especially helpful in repairing damage caused by sugar or fructose. Calcium CMIF, or cell membrane integrity factor, helps build cell membrane transport protein portals, allows neurotransmitter functions to be restored, improves the function of all cell types, slows aging by keeping organs and tissue in youthful function, and can inhibit some metastatic cancers, according to Johns Hopkins. Magnesium mineral transport factor facilitates mineral transports, enhances energy production or ATP in mitochondria, tranquilizes the nervous system, and relaxes muscles. These target specific cell functions in the cells of every organ, facilitating the body's own production capability. CMIF is a complicated molecule, not just a simple calcium, and, as you can see, includes several oxygen ions. Oxygen, as you may know, can be very helpful in the destruction of cancer cells, since we know that white blood cells inject hydrogen peroxide into cancer cells to kill them. Mineral transport factor with magnesium is used to help the mitochondria and is also a complicated molecule that is readily accepted through the cell membrane wall and targets the mitochondria immediately. The body seems to understand that these molecules need to be transported to the cell membrane wall by the structure of the molecule itself. Almost every aging function in the body can be linked somehow to mitochondrial dysfunction, so maintaining your body's mitochondrial integrity becomes very important. ATP, adenosine triphosphate, is the main source of energy in cells and must be bound to a magnesium ion in order to be biologically active. This diagram demonstrates the use of enzymes. Enzymes break down the molecules. In this case, it shows how a sugar molecule is broken down into its two constituent parts, glucose and fructose. Glucose targets the muscles, and fructose goes to the liver. And in high doses, glucose will cause glycation and ultimately weakening of the muscle tissue, whereas fructose will actually damage the liver, increasing cellular degeneration and aging. Enzymes, in general, break down complicated molecules so they can be reknitted into new molecules that will be more efficient in extracting energy from consumed food and be utilized by the body more quickly. So finally, let's reiterate our first slide. Preventative medicine requires less effort, uses less money, and produces better results in the prevention of illness and the protection of our health.